The quietest streets often hide the loudest secrets, and I learned that on a bright summer morning when my neighbor stood at my front gate with a nervous smile and asked a question that changed everything. Her husband had been away on a business trip for several days, and the entire neighborhood assumed life was moving as usual. But there was something unusual in her eyes, something that looked like hope fighting against fear. She softly asked if I wanted to go on a picnic with her. In that single moment, countless thoughts rushed through my mind. I knew how easily people judged what they never understood, and I had no idea that saying yes would lead me into one of the most emotional days of my life. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Echoes of Hope. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories that remind us the world still has compassion. My name is Owen, and I had lived alone for nearly 4 years after losing both my parents within 18 months. Life became a routine of work, grocery shopping, and silent evenings spent watching the sunset from my porch. Across the street lived Marin, a woman in her early 30s whose warm smile never seemed to match the sadness hidden behind her eyes. She was always polite, always respectful, and always looked as though she was carrying an invisible weight that no one else noticed. Her husband, Curtis, traveled constantly for work. Whenever he returned, expensive cars appeared in the driveway, expensive packages arrived at the door, and neighbors admired what looked like the perfect marriage. But perfection is often the easiest mask to wear. I had exchanged only friendly greetings with Marin over the years. She loved gardening and spent every sunny morning taking care of colorful flowers that somehow bloomed even during difficult weather. Sometimes she would wave from her yard while I watered the small vegetable patch my mother had once cared for. We were neighbors, nothing more, yet there was always an unspoken understanding between us. We were both people who smiled because it was easier than explaining the pain inside. That sunny Saturday morning felt different from the start. The air carried the fresh scent of pine trees after a light rain the night before, birds filled the neighborhood with cheerful songs, and children laughed while riding bicycles along the sidewalks. When Marin invited me to a nearby lakeside park, she explained that she simply did not want to spend another beautiful day sitting alone in a silent house. There was nothing inappropriate in her words, only loneliness. I hesitated because I knew how easily neighbors created stories out of ordinary moments, but something in her expression reminded me of my own years of isolation. I agreed. The drive to the park lasted only 20 minutes, yet the silence inside the car spoke louder than conversation. The bright blue sky reflected perfectly on the calm lake when we arrived. Families were flying colorful kites, elderly couples walked hand in hand beneath tall oak trees, and children chased butterflies across wide green fields. It was the kind of peaceful afternoon that made people forget their worries for a little while. We spread a simple blanket beneath a large tree overlooking the water. Marin unpacked homemade sandwiches, fresh fruit, and lemonade. Nothing about the picnic felt romantic. Instead, it felt like two lonely people sharing a quiet escape from lives that had become too heavy. As the afternoon continued, she slowly opened her heart. She admitted that the smiling version of herself everyone admired was not real anymore. Her husband had become emotionally distant years earlier. Every conversation turned into criticism, every mistake became another reason for disappointment, and every lonely night convinced her that expensive gifts could never replace genuine affection. Listening to her reminded me of something my father once said. He believed that loneliness inside a crowded house hurt far more than loneliness inside an empty one. I finally understood what he meant. Hours passed peacefully as we watched ducks glide across the sparkling water. We laughed at small childhood memories, shared stories about our parents, and discovered that grief had shaped both our lives in unexpected ways. She confessed that she missed feeling seen as a person rather than as someone's wife. I admitted that after losing my family, I had forgotten what real friendship felt like. When the afternoon sun began lowering across the lake, something unexpected happened. A little girl nearby accidentally dropped her stuffed rabbit into the water while playing near the dock. Without thinking, I rushed toward the lake and managed to retrieve it before it floated too far away. The child hugged the soaked toy as though it were priceless treasure. Her grateful parents thanked me repeatedly, but what stayed with me was Maren quietly wiping away tears. Later she admitted that watching such a simple act of kindness reminded her that goodness still existed in ordinary people. On the drive home, neither of us realized someone had taken photographs from a distance. By evening, whispers had already begun moving through the neighborhood. A few neighbors assumed the worst because assumptions spread faster than truth. Friendly greetings became awkward glances. Curtains moved whenever either of us stepped outside. It amazed me how quickly strangers could write stories without knowing a single chapter. The following Monday, Curtis unexpectedly returned home earlier than planned. I saw his car pull into the driveway just as I arrived from work. Minutes later, loud voices echoed from inside their house before the front door slammed shut. Maren walked outside with tears running down her face. She wasn't looking toward my home. She simply needed fresh air because the walls around her had become too painful to bear. I wanted to help, but I also understood that stepping into another family's struggles often created even greater misunderstandings. So I remained on my porch, hoping she knew she wasn't completely alone. The next morning, an envelope appeared in my mailbox without a return address. Inside were printed photographs of our picnic with ugly handwritten accusations across them. Someone wanted to create conflict where none existed. My stomach sank. For a brief moment, I questioned whether accepting that invitation had been a mistake. But deep inside, I knew compassion should never be mistaken for betrayal. A few days later, Maren knocked on my door again. Her eyes looked tired, but there was also determination. She thanked me for treating her with simple human respect during one of the hardest periods of her life. She explained that her marriage had already been falling apart long before that picnic. The photographs had only forced painful truths into the open. Years of emotional neglect could no longer be hidden behind expensive vacations and smiling family pictures. What surprised me most was not her sadness but her courage. Instead of blaming rumors or neighbors, she decided to rebuild her life with honesty. She enrolled in a local college to finish the education she had abandoned after marriage. She accepted a part-time job at a community library where children loved listening to her read stories. Slowly, the woman who once seemed trapped behind invisible walls began discovering herself again. Watching her transformation changed me as well. For years I had believed surviving loss meant avoiding new relationships because they only led to more pain. But Maren's strength taught me something different. Healing was not about forgetting heartbreak. Healing meant allowing hope to enter despite the risk of being hurt again. Seasons changed. Summer became autumn, and golden leaves covered the same park where our picnic had taken place. The gossip eventually disappeared because rumors always search for new victims. Those who had judged us quietly realized they had misunderstood everything. Some even apologized. Others simply pretended nothing had happened. One afternoon, nearly a year later, I returned to that lakeside park alone. I sat beneath the same tree where two lonely neighbors had once shared sandwiches and difficult truths. Families still laughed nearby, children still chased butterflies, and the peaceful lake reflected another beautiful daytime sky. But something inside me had changed forever. That place no longer reminded me of rumors or suspicion. It reminded me that kindness sometimes requires courage, especially when others choose misunderstanding over compassion. Not long afterward, Maren organized a community picnic at the same park. This time, dozens of neighbors attended. Elderly couples, young families, teenagers, and children all shared food, games, and laughter together. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about creating a better future. The woman who had once felt completely alone had become the person bringing an entire neighborhood together. Standing among those smiling faces, I realized that one simple invitation had transformed more than two lives. It had reminded an entire community that people deserve understanding before judgment. The strongest friendships are often built not on grand adventures but on small moments of kindness when someone quietly says, "You don't have to face today alone." If this story has touched your heart so far, please let us know by liking this video, sharing it with your loved ones, and subscribing to Echoes of Hope. Your support encourages us to continue sharing meaningful stories that inspire hope and compassion.